You're making that extension? That looks good.
The people on here like it, they use it.
Same.
Yeah.
They don't call us.
I'm back to remind myself. Ready with tomorrow.
Chuck, the 911, we put it on Monday. Sometime. Accident from my house Friday night at midnight. Never got police response until Sunday at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Could not get through. Instead of waiting. Something's wrong. We dialed in.
Okay. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with section 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all present except trustee Peeper, who is absent excused. Please be advised per 19.84 parent 2 that information and comment will be received from the public. It is the policy of this municipality that public input be limited to a 3-minute period per person with a time extension granted at the discretion of the chairperson. Please be advised that there may be limited discussion of the information received, but no action will be taken under public comments. Is there anyone looking to come forward to speak during citizen comments? Anyone for citizen comments? No. Okay, then we will go to approval of minutes.
Move approval is presented.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We move on to item 5, reports. First, police monthly report.
You had the monthly report in front of you. The call volume was up in March from February. Traffic stops were up. That makes arrests go up also. So they were up. K-9 deployments and arrests. You have a copy of that. We had a bunch of those this month also. Searches of vehicles off the K-9. And then our training reports at the end.
Any questions for the chief?
No questions.
Okay, Battalion commander?
You also have the monthly report for the fire department. I'll note on the second page that our NFPA compliance totals are a little bit off. We're going through some reporting speed bumps, I'll call them. As we switch to county fire, they have a different way of reporting their times. So they're reporting the time that the dispatch center was notified rather than the time that the department was notified. So you're going to see a little bit of fluctuation there over the next probably 2 or 3 months as we figure out exactly how to report that correctly. But as far as our report goes internally, we're staying right on track, right about 88 to 90%. The rest of the report, the mutual aid, we had six incidents where we were outside of the village and 2 where we requested mutual aid into the village. I ran the preliminary reports for April, and we had given mutual aid twice in April and received 4 times in April. Typically see that balances itself out over the course of a year within a few calls of each other. In the history, we typically request more mutual aid than we do give. Additionally, some of those, one of the Richfield calls and one of the Thiensville volunteer calls, they happen on border streets. We don't have border disagreements when we're responding to an emergency. We just respond and we'll deal with the mutual aid agreement afterwards. So some of those incidents may just occur on those areas, and that's why you'll see it noted there. Increase in our inspections. We have a new inspector that started in February. He's been doing a great job. Came from the state, so he's very qualified for the position. And then several public education and training events. We've gotten donations from the Red Cross for smoke detectors. We've been doing smoke detector installs. Did have a small fire at Bub's Irish Pub approximately a week ago. with a quick extinguishment and very little damage to the building. That's all I have unless there's questions.
Any questions? Trustee Baum?
On average, for the residents that are watching, our standard response time is 8 minutes and the slowdown is dragging us down to what?
So I would say our standard response, I don't want to give it exactly off the top of my head, but I would say between 5 and 7 minutes. And the slowdown is just the time that it takes from the call to get into the dispatch center before the dispatcher pages the call out. There really hasn't been any change in that amount of time. It's just being reported now until we can get the reporting software to pull that time out correctly.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, overtime report?
We had a little bit of extra overtime this month due to some mandatory training. Officers going to certification trainings and instructor trainings. But that should taper off again once they all get trained and come back and do our in-house training.
Fire's been lower on overtime than we were the last year. However, we do have several planned and unplanned absences that are occurring right now due to some injuries. We currently have 2 members that are out, and with the planned leaves, we will have at peak 5 members out. So we do anticipate over the next month or so that we'll have an uptick in our overtime.
Any questions on the overtime report? And we go to policy updates.
None for the police department.
None for fire.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to unfinished business. Item A, creation of an additional administrative captain to the police department command structure. And this is Chief Merton.
I took this to the General Government Finance Committee last month per your request. They forwarded the recommendation unanimously for option 1 that is in the packet. And the money was to be covered on the savings from consolidating the dispatch center.
Trustee Baum?
Is that going to be recurring funding going forward, or is it a one-time funding source?
That'll be a savings every year.
So we'll continue.
So once we do away with all the maintenance for the dispatch, we'll be saving that money every year.
So it could be a proportion to this every year.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'll make a motion to approve option 1 as recommended by GGF as presented.
Second.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to new business item A, application for an amended outside premise extension, Mateo's Mexican Grill, W156 and 110598 Pilgrim Road.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
And any questions?
I have just one question. I noticed that the tent has already been up for a couple days, and I was just curious if that was allowed or appropriate before this approval.
They jumped the gun technically, but it's no harm, no foul. So
Okay,
they're not selling. I don't think they were using it. They just have it up.
I just have it up. Okay.
Right, and have there been any fire or any violations that need to be fixed or any problems that you guys are aware of?
Nothing that we're aware of at Mateo's currently.
Right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None, motion carries. Move on to new business item B, application for renewal of secondhand article dealer mall or fleet market license, Pilgrim Antique Mall, W156 and 11500 Pilgrim Road, Beverly J. Solomon.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Move on to new business item C, producer full service retail sales application, Component Brewing for Hops and Hounds event on July 11th, 2025 at Homestead Hollow County Park.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Trustee Baum?
Police chief, are there any issues with this particular?
I don't see any. No.
No? That's it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And we will move on to new item business D, which is presentation on public safety facility needs. This is a discussion only. This was brought forward by Administrator Krecklow, who cannot be here with us tonight. So we will just have some discussion with some of the things that he had on the list or where we're at. And there's nothing is being decided tonight. And this is just the first discussion in this process. So I guess I would just like to know from the chief and battalion chief. We've been presented, we received a very large presentation, dollar-wise and brand new building, and that's great, but I guess does that meet your needs? I know it's hard to tell just from looking at a drawing. Is it too much, not enough? You need further to review, like going to other places where they've recently built? I mean, what do you need before we start kind of asking questions?
I think we would need to see other facilities with our size and how they're laid out. It's hard to judge something by a drawing. I'm able to picture it. So that would be my recommendation, is to maybe see some buildings that were constructed in the last couple of years with our population, the growth that we're gonna have and our size, and go check those out and see the layouts and what they all have, the things they did good and the things they maybe wish they would have done before we get deep into the drawing phases of it.
Okay.
From the fire side, we spent a significant amount of time. We did visit several stations nearby that had just been completed, as well as talked with others that have stations that are proposed. As far as the separate stations go, we're very confident that that's going to meet our needs. We used the 2050 plan to project our data, population and growth in the village to determine exactly what those needs would be at that point in time. If the village board or public safety committee so chose to make that 2075 or 2100 even, we would have to then probably go back and look again. As for the combined facility, that one came slightly quicker for us. We didn't have nearly as much time to make that presentation. I do think there's probably some work still that needs to get done on that floor plan though.
Okay, trustee Baum, you had your hand up?
So you're still open as to joint or single separate buildings? Or are we fixed on the joint building now?
I think that's one of the questions that's asked here tonight is the board open to separate facilities? One of the things we've discussed several times internally is the location needs for each department, and how they may differ slightly. And that's one of the big focuses, at least from the fire side, that we've been focusing on. We get tracked on our response times, as well as people's individual insurances are affected by our response times. And that's why it's very important for us to have those, the station in the correct location.
So have we really
Chairperson Cox,
progressed?
if I may,
Chief Delaney is on WebEx.
Oh, okay.
if I may,
Yes, go ahead, chief.
for the fire department, it's not a concern of if it's a combined building or separate buildings. For the fire department, it is all about the location of the building. We would be more than happy to share a building with the police department. There are some advantages to that. Obviously, we work together very closely, but the location is what drives the fire department. The police are already responding in the village, patrolling in the village where we're responding. So that area, that location is very critical for us.
Right. So we're still at site selection on all this. We're basically we're starting over again.
Correct.
I will look at it from that perspective then. That's all I have.
Steve Morse?
Chief Merton, do you feel like there's benefits to being at the same location as the fire department, or do you feel like that would affect your call times?
You'd have to find a location that would fit both the fire and police department. From what I understand is the village doesn't own anything right now. Response times don't really affect us because we're out patrolling. However, when we do bring prisoners back to the station, that does affect us. as far as bringing them back and then responding back out. So
Okay. Thank you.
And if I may,
Mhm.
one of the benefits to a combined building is there's always somebody in the police, in the fire department. For the most part,
Short of on calls, yes.
yes, sort of being, there's usually somebody in there. With the police department, there wouldn't be anybody in the police department at some times. Therefore, the person who walks into the facility to get help wouldn't get any. If they were, might not get any if they were separated. That was a discussion we've had for quite a while.
Right, so if it's a combined building, we're a little bit limited to location so that it works for the needs of the fire department being able to reach the northeastern side of the village, correct?
That's correct. The northeastern side is our largest concern as for coverage area. As for our call locations is southeastern. So somewhere on the east side of the village would be ideal for us.
And so I guess I would think one of the first things then is to set up to get you guys to be able to go see other places, because that's going to dictate when you're looking at plans or telling them plan adjustments, what you would need or want. Would that be correct?
correct. The facility layout, how many personnel they have, and all the space that they need for that.
And I think one of the things that, if I may, one of
For
the
the
things
fire
that came from the,
department. Go ahead.
thanks.
Battalion
One of the
Chief.
things that came from the Grave PRA Moore presentation, I know they gave several possible drawings, but what they stressed to us as we were going through the process is that's not necessarily the layout of how a station would have to look. Rather, that's how much space would be needed for a station for a village of our size or a department of our size. Looking around from the fire side, West Bend is proposing a 40,000 square foot station. Watertown, which is a much similar department than West Bend is to us, is just built a 41,000 square foot station. So we did do a lot of work to try and narrow down, trim as much fat, if you will, in that plan as possible. We got down to roughly 26,000 square feet that we felt would be really acceptable until 2050.
Okay. Chief Delane, did you have something?
Yes, I think kind of what we're looking for, as Chief Holmes was talking about, is we're kind of looking for a main station and satellite stations, and trimming that down to that 26,000 square foot would get us into that position of having a headquarters basically and satellites beyond that. We're not looking to have multiple mega structures, but a headquarters and satellites.
Who is fronting this effort? Who's leading this charge?
That's a
For
good
the
question.
discussion.
No one really knows.
All for getting this done. It kind of languishes because I don't feel that there's any leader to this project. I don't know if Steve was supposed to be leading it or what, but I don't have a sense of. I'm in
Administrator
charge.
Krecklo.
I'm gonna start setting up the meetings. I don't think anybody's doing that. Would that be fair?
That's fair to say. Administrator Krecklo was going to, and he was unable to be here tonight, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo what the chief said. I believe the intention was for the village administrator to kind of restart this process now that the election is passed and there's a new public safety chair to get this process going again. What the intention of this agenda item was tonight is to start that process and provide feedback from the committee to staff on, where they would like us to focus our efforts. I know in the packet, there's 3 questions that were asked of the committee, and we're looking for some guidance as it relates to those questions.
Okay, so let's get to those 3 questions.
Chairperson Cutts,
Yes.
if you recall at our meeting last week, we kind of addressed this a little bit, that there needs to be somebody to lead this drive. We've all presented our needs, but we do need to have input on where we go from here and what you guys hear from the community as to what we should be doing as well. So there does need to be somebody to lead this drive.
Right.
Okay, so where do I find the 3 questions at?
Then the summary explanation. The first question is, what level of future growth should the facilities accommodate? Do we want facilities that meet our current needs or meet projected needs through 2050 or some other date?
As long as they're.
What was that, chief?
Disregard, my kids were behind me.
They have to go to bed. I never build anything for the next 10 years. I build everything for an extended period. It's gonna take us 3 years to get this under construction and operational, so we're halfway through that. So I need a longer time period than immediate.
So we're thinking 2050 to coincide with the 2050 plan?
I would recommend that myself, yes.
Is that what we did for the DPW? Was it out to 2050 or farther?
DPW, we sized it for a 50-year building, understanding that in the next 50 years, this village is going to grow and we have enough room to put all the apparatus that we will want inside the building. So while people think it is overbuilt, it is built for our future expansion, our anticipated growth.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts, trustee Borst?
Just thinking of the timeline, I mean, I think definitely to 2050 makes sense, but perhaps, and this, I think this is hard to say without all the facts and data, but perhaps extending that timeline a bit longer as well. As trustee Baum said, it takes a few years to get to the point where we're building, a few years after that to complete it. And that's, you know, not close to 2050, but getting closer to that date. So perhaps seeing what 30 years would even look like, 40 years, 50, and seeing how large it would have to be.
Yeah, you're looking at, if we're at 2025, you're looking at 25 years out to 2050. We're already being told from various studies that we have that we need this many new housing units. We're going to have this much business coming into our community. There's a start at all this. So to plan for 25 years out, based on those studies that we currently have, is not an unreasonable vision.
Okay. So do you think we should recommend 2050 or go out 50 years like the DPW? Or give them 2050 as a starting point?
What we did for the DPW is we started out at a much lower level, just enough to house what we have. And when it got to the board level, the board said, no, we need to go bigger. So I would start with 25 years out, see what that brings us, and then let the village board then say, no, we need to project farther out. But I think 25 years from now is a reasonable goal. It's where the studies are that we currently have for housing and business. So let's stay with that for now. That'd be my recommendation.
Okay.
Chairperson Cuts.
Yes. Go ahead.
So in 2001, the fire department had a study done among a number of other ones. And at this point in time, the fire department was supposed to be at 4 stations within the village. I don't believe that that's necessary. I don't believe that their projections were correct at that point in time. The reason I bring this up is to show that we've had this known need for, at this point in time, 24 years already. And going back to the last study we had in 2018, where we were on a 5-year plan and we're 2 years past that already. I understand all these things take time. The reason I bring it up is to kind of just to give you an idea on how critical these needs are getting to be.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Delane. All right. So our recommendation then for the staff would be start at 2050.
Correct.
Okay. Question 2 is the board open to separate facilities or should analysis focus on a combined facility?
I'll start out. When I first started looking at this and looking at the various plans, I looked at if we did a combined facility, there are elements in the buildings that we can share. We didn't have to build everything that was on the plans. We could have shrunk it down a little bit. So I was pushing for a combined facility myself.
I do see the shared benefits for a combined facility. I think if we can find that location that makes sense for fire and police, I think that combining would have a potential cost savings. So I think it should at least be in scope for now. And I think we need more details on both.
I also believe that a combined facility has benefits. Both sets of command staffs can work together to meet the village's goals, to meet their needs, and it'd just be easier for working interdepartmentally. I think it's a good idea.
Okay,
Chairperson Cuts, if I could.
yes.
I do think, I agree with Chief Delane's assessment there that there's definitely advantages to a combined facility. Something we've discussed internally also, though, is that the shared uses may not be as realized as initially hoped. The police department has, and I don't want to speak for Chief Merton, the police department has certain lockdowns that they have to have, or accessibilities that would restrict fire personnel from entering to certain areas on the police side. Likewise, the fire department, we have narcotic drugs that we have to keep track of as well, and have to have lockdowns for that as well. Additionally, the police department meets several times a day for their meetings and roll calls, as well as the fire department does the same thing. We're meeting for those same things typically during the same times. However, we're talking about two very different things. While there is, I agree, definitely space savings and efficiencies that can be had in a combined facility, I do think there's going to be some other challenges that may offset those efficiencies.
Okay, Chief Merton, did you have any thoughts on that?
I don't think this, you're gonna have some shared facility, but in the long run, I don't think we're gonna be sharing that much from the police and fire department, because each facility has to have we have CJIS requirements we have to have. So we can't just have people walking through the building, so they're all gonna be secured entrances where we're in. The only thing that could possibly be shared would be a training room, which is one room out of the entire building. So we'd have to look and see what else could be shared, but I think that would probably be the only thing that would benefit both departments.
And speaking to Jackson, just completed a shared facility a few years ago. They ran into the same issues where initially they were expecting a lot more realized savings between a shared police and fire department. And to Chief Merton's point, they ended up only sharing a training room, which they ended up building 2 training rooms now anyways. The rest of it is all secured hallways.
Okay, so probably the biggest advantage would just be cost savings.
Right.
All right, so I don't know what thoughts we have on number 2. If we have anything definite, because it would have to be in a location that works for the fire department being able to reach the other part of the village.
Yes, my preference would be a combined site. I believe there's cost savings in that.
I do agree. I think it's worth looking into and seeing if there is the right location.
Sure, because the training room could be in the middle
Yep.
with
Yeah.
going off.
See, until you have the final architect, using one architect, this guy's going through everything. PRA is going to take it from here to there. Okay. So until you get deeper into this and they start actually drawing our plans, a lot of this is speculative, and they have to have a site in mind before they can really refine it. So I prefer a combined site, a combined building. However, once we get into the design, if they give valid reasons why they should be separated, then we can reconsider that. But right now, I'd say look at a combined building.
I think biggest and foremost though, is we need direction from this committee on how to proceed. Otherwise, we're just running like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to figure out what we want to do.
Then I would recommend you proceed with a combined building. That is my preference.
And are there communities close by that have a combined? I know you had mentioned a few that don't have combined, but are there a few that do that we could look at?
Yeah, so Jackson has a combined facility that they just completed, I believe, in 2021. Don't quote me on that though, please. And Mequon has a combined police and fire station. However, theirs is much older and not really suiting the needs of their community either. So they're looking at other options.
Port Washington is also in the process of building a combined police and fire. They just approved that process, and I think they're breaking ground, I believe, today. So that might be one to take a look at as well. They're smaller than Germantown, but they'll have a combined police and fire as well.
Right. So I guess the recommendation that I'm hearing, I think we should make, is that our preference would be a combined building, but I think they need to set up for police and fire to go tour some of these other ones, because then they'll have better input as to if that will really work or disadvantages, advantages. But it also has to be a location that would work for the fire department to have a combined building. So that needs some more information before, I guess, we can really decide. But that would be the direction, is combined would be our first preference. Okay. And question 3, should we focus analysis of sites on property owned by the village, property currently listed for sale, or all property in the village?
Personally, I'd go with all property in the village, but focus on what we've got already. When this was before us last time, my preference was actually, I believe it was Friedenfeld Park on Country Air. That is the farthest east site. It is right in the middle of the village. It was preferential to the fire department, as I recall.
Correct.
The objection was from some trustees who didn't want to give up parkland. But if we are going to be doing the park at the end of Main Street at the recycling center, we're picking up more parkland than we would ever be giving up. So that was always my preference, is to use that location.
I think, looking at all land available right now, not just what we currently own, is probably going to be the best stance for now, just given especially the fact that we do want to go to a combined police and fire building. I think that's limiting some of the options. So at least by opening it up to all the land, we're opening up the possibilities.
Okay, I would agree with that. Looking at everything available and seeing if it fits where one, or then if we have to look down the road at 2, that would be something we'd know by that. Yes.
Just for a point on that, when the Grave PRA Moore team presented, they recommended a 7 to 8 acre parcel for a combined facility, just so that's in mind.
In addition to that, from the fire department's point of view, our absolute best option is Friedenfeld Park. However, as we had learned over the last few days about the Ascension property or Flower Source property, that is a good property for us as well to have a station.
Okay. That would be good for that area. If it goes that route, would be good for the police department also? Seeing as you're Pilgrim and Mequon Road?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything else?
I think one thing that we hadn't really touched on too much, it kind of mentions it in the summary explanation a little bit. Also the expansion of Fire Station 2, we've been working towards that as kind of a separate project, if you will. Is that something the board is willing to continue to consider, that they'd like staff to continue that route?
So the question I have is, with the new fire, you still want to keep that station. You don't want to get rid of it. You have
Correct.
2
So-
locations.
Correct. So when we did the plans, part of the reason we were able to trim it really down to that 26,000 square foot mark was based on both items happening, the expansion at the current station as well as the new station. Without the expansion at the current station, we would have to look into the plans out for the next station.
Okay. All right, so that looks like then we would have to think about the remodeling also to
Well-
keep the 2.
Is it, do we do it, are we going to the position of we are doing it all at once? Or we are okay with remodeling fire station number 2 down the road a little ways once we get this under our belts? Or do we want to borrow all the money at once?
Well, and I think that's obviously needs more discussion than just tonight, because that's a bigger project. But as you pointed out, making new buildings is going to be several years before that even happens. And there's current needs at the existing station right now. So I think we do have to think about both and addressing both currently, at least maybe getting a start on that. I don't know. We need more information onto actual timelines and properties and what's going to happen.
And the economics of both. What's the dollar value for the fire station and the remodel of station 2? What's the cost of a combined building? Are we doing, you gotta
Right.
be open to it all.
Right.
And then whittle it down as you move through the process.
Right, so we would need all options presented.
And do,
Respective, sorry, guys.
go ahead.
Respective of Fire Station 2, I will be moving my office into the Survive Alive house, which is still shared with the rec department. So we have enough bunk rooms to serve the current firefighters we have. And I understand that that can work, and that's fine. My concern is myself growing unaware of what is actually happening in the fire station. There, part of it would be, if we have 2 stations, that'll be a part of it too, but I'll have supervisors in each station. Right now, I'll just have a supervisor in one fire station and me sitting in the Survive Alive house. And that is a wee bit concerning to me.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the image that was proposed, and it's 2 extensions, one out of each end of the building, if I'm understanding existing and future. You're still looking at really 3 full years before you get this operational. So,
Yes, I would agree with that. Yep.
yeah, let's move them both, move everything down the path and let's see where it shakes out. Yes, I could agree to moving this forward if we're downsizing the main fire station. If we're combining, if we're separating, then I wouldn't, not sure we want to do this right now. But let's proceed with, I would recommend we proceed with this going forward. We proceed with a joint building. Look at all the properties. I like Friedenfeld Park. Let's see where what this can do. So those are my perspectives on it.
Okay, and then the last question before I end, we had talked about when I met with both chiefs and Steve Krecklow, is if we would have the Public Safety Committee actually go tour the facilities and we could hold a meeting there, which would be set up, public could come to also, to see what the current conditions are, to have a better visual than just looking at stuff on paper. So I don't know if you guys are open to that.
Yeah, if you want, I'm fine with that.
Yep, me too.
Okay. All right, so then that would be the last recommendation then would be for staff to coordinate some future meetings at both locations, and that would be open to the public to come and see that as well. So
It-
that is the
Just
end
so I
of-
have some clarity on this,
Okay,
I would really appreciate that, and I think you kind of addressed this, that this committee does the research and drives us as to what we should be doing, not that we are flying blind, because that flying blind is very discerning and not easy to work within.
And I think with Steve being the point, like he was on a DPW, you will get the feedback from this committee that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Without that leader of the event, it's just going to flounder. So let's get Steve on point, and then we will get you all the information you need.
okay. Any other questions or anything you wanted to say before we end?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Chief Delane, anything else?
No, thank you for listening, and sorry I wasn't there. It's been a day, so thanks.
Okay. All right, with that, our meeting is adjourned and our next meeting will be June 2nd at 6 PM in this boardroom. Thank you.